Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be converting this CRF110 into a mini sumo, and how we're going to be doing that is with all Grom components, all Grom suspension. You guys know I got a couple Groms that I have built already, had a bunch of spare parts laying around, and I had a bunch of friends that contributed a bunch of stock parts that they had. So if you're watching this, thank you. You guys know who you are. And yeah, so here's the CRF110. This is what we're going to be using. I got a full Grom swing arm with wheel, everything. I got a full Grom triple forks, wheel, and everything, and we're going to be swapping all that into this bike. Now this isn't going to be a tutorial, but more so a documentation of what it takes to do this swap. There's a couple forum pages and a couple things online that have been floating around, but a lot of the information is different from each other, so I'm kind of curious to see what exact parts I'm going to actually need and which ones I'm going to use. So luckily I have a bunch of stock stuff over here that I can use, and then from there we'll just take it from there and see how things go. So like I said, this isn't going to be a tutorial. I'm sure there's a million videos on how to take your CRF110 apart, but I'll be documenting the journey of converting this thing into a GRF110. I guess that's what we'll call it. All right, let's get into it. So here's the bike. I think we're going to start with the rear swing arm first, just because there's less wires and I have to drill a hole for this shock adapter. We'll get into that, into the frame. But once we finish the rear, then we'll move on to the front. There's a little bit of things that I'm unsure about as far as the bearings and things like that, and I don't know if the cables are going to be long enough, so we'll tackle that second. But for now, let's go ahead and get the lift lifted up, and let's go ahead and get the rear swing arm off. Alright, so with the fairings removed, I'm just going to take the shock out and then drop this whole swing arm out, because this Avail Motorsports shock adapter is going to basically mount in its place, and it's going to allow us to use a Grom style shock. So let's just go ahead and get the shock off. So I got the swing arm off, and this Avail Motorsports shock adapter, you have to drill one hole here. So once you drill that hole there, this basically relocates the shock to accept the Grom shock. Alright, so after that hole is drilled, there's a spacer included with the kit that goes inside the frame here, and then you can bolt this together. And then the swing arm bolt's a little long, probably have to cut that, and you had to add 2 little washers on this side, and then the kit also comes with 2 little spacers that I added to this side. And I'm just going to put the nut on there, but the swing arm's hanging. Alright, so get the front in the air. I'm going to take these forks off here, drop this out, and then start working on getting the triple tree out, and then we'll figure out what bearings or what's needed to fit in this CRF frame here. But the back, I got the triple tree off, and we're gonna have to figure out what bearings I'm gonna go here. So from what I've read online, some people said you have to machine this, use the Grom bearings. I've heard someone use the CRF top bearing and the Grom lower bearing. So I'm gonna test each one and see which one fits, and hopefully don't have to machine anything today. So that would mean I have to take all this apart. What I learned so far is the CRF top one obviously works. The CRF bottom one is definitely a different size, so I do have the Grom lower stem bearing in there, and so far it looks like it fits perfectly, and it's gonna mesh just fine with that, because obviously the bearing was made for that. So if you're doing this, CRF top bearing, Grom lower bearing. Alright, so Grom lower bearing, CRF upper bearing, Grom triples, Grom forks. I got the stock bar still on there with a riser, and it turns good. And the stops still hit, which is nice. So you're not gonna overextend your handlebars if you crash or whatever. And then Mnnthbx sells these adapters here that I already put on. This is for the front fender mount, and then this is for the number plate. So I need to figure out a spot to put the ignition. It's not gonna fit in there anymore because this blocks it. So I'm probably just gonna have to find a spot for it, as well as the fuel light. But I'm gonna get the number plate on there and fender and see what it looks like. Threw the fairings on just for test fit, see what it looks like. And this thing looks sick. So the Mnnthbx brackets lines up pretty good. This looks like factory. I'm not sold on the bar riser yet. I might go to stock rise. But yeah, pretty simple. Alright, so now since the swing arm's mounted on, I got a chain on. This is a stock Grom length chain. Fit pretty good. The front end's on. I already told you guys about the bearings. Mnnthbx makes this nice bracket that mounts all this stuff back on. And as far as the front disc brake, I have a spare master that I had laying around from my old build. I'm going to use that to this brake line. And then as far as the rear master goes, I'm going to have to cut this off. And Mnnthbx also makes this plate here that goes, the rear master is going to mount there. And they include this tab. So once I cut this off, I'm going to weld this tab on here, and then I'll be able to grab the bottom of the master and actuate the master. So I also have a brake line. So we're going to go ahead and get the rear master on, and then we can get to bleeding the brakes and she'll be done. And then I'm going to clean that up with the flap wheel here and just give this a nice round radius, and then I'll end up welding that piece that comes with here that attaches to the master. So we're halfway there. So I just want to give a quick walk around of the bike outside so you guys can see what it looks like. So she looks pretty sick. Everything's been holding up really well. I mean, so you can see a little bit better here. The disc brake setup, rear discs, front disc brakes. So yeah, there she is in all her glory.